Welcome back to News Talk. Coming your way later this half hour, the latest on the FBI's battle with Apple over iPhone security. We'll talk with a local tech attorney. Right now, though, let's get back to our conversation with ABC7 government watchdog Chris Pabst and John Townsend of AAA of the Mid-Atlantic. Our focus, speed cameras whose location raises suspicion for area motorists. John, is there any doubt that a well-placed speed camera, and Chris, I think a moment ago at the top of our conversation, you referenced communities that tend to put them in school areas. There is a benefit that comes from a speed camera that's positioned near where there are a lot of pedestrians around, where maybe the engineering of the road can be problematic, where there is a history of accidents. I mean, we don't quarrel with the basic notion that this is a tool that is there to be used, do we?
Yes, we don't. And the speed camera that Chris is talking about that will go unnamed at this hour, if you look at the Safety Nexus study, you'll see they had 113 or 110 crashes at that site. But the crashes, the vast, or the majority, 50% of them were rear-end collisions. And that's because you also have a red light camera at that site. And so what drivers are doing is they're stopping short to avoid that ticket, and they're getting rear-ended. And that's the justification that the district used to put the camera there. And these cameras have a legitimate purpose, because no matter where you place the camera, you will see within a 6-month period between a 70 to 80% reduction in speeding at those sites. And whether it's a legitimate site or an illegitimate site,
and there's
they
something
work
else.
wonders.
And then there's something else to add on to that, is that this study that was done in 2013, and the idea was it was for a planned camera at that location. But the camera was already at that location. But DDOT did this study to say, hey, do we need a camera here? But we found an error in that report. The error is that the study was based on that road being 45 miles an hour. The westbound direction, 45 miles an hour. It is not 45 miles an hour. It is 35 miles an hour. Now, I called the district about that, DDOT, and they simply played it off saying that this was just an error. We know it's 35 miles an hour, but that is not what the study was based on. The study was based on a 45 mile an hour speed.
Another discrepancy. And the fact of the matter is they were ordered to do these studies by the council as part of legislation called the Safety Nexus Study, Speed Limit and Safety Nexus Studies. And they reviewed 300 camera sites, either existing or planned, in the District of Columbia. And the Inspector General came back and looked at all of that data, released a report in September of last year, a year before last, that was castigated by the council, but the Inspector General found that in 50% of these sites, there was no justification or no need for a camera, because most of these speed limits were at the 85th percentile speed. Now, that's an engineering term. Chris used it a moment ago, but he put it in layman's terms. He said, when I drive this road, yes, I can intuit what the speed limit should be by the configuration. That is how the 85th percentile speed is established. And when you see that these cameras are not at the 85th percentile speed, but below that, right, it's a speed trap.
And on this particular road, not to cut you off, but the 85th percentile speed, I think, is 56. The speed limit is 35.
And I'll guarantee you that most of the people doing that speed on that road don't feel like they're Mario Andretti, they don't feel like they're driving unsafely, and chances are they are not. It's just a disconnect between the posted speed and what normal driving by a normal safe driver would bring you to, right, in terms of speed. Correct. I should have opened the phone lines a few moments ago. Let me do it right now, but we don't have a ton of time. What speed cameras in the DC metro area do you love to hate? Which ones do you think are more about the Benjamins than improving safety along the roadway? And what do you think about this program as it is administered generally, the speed camera program in this region? Dial right away at 703-387-1020. Those of you watching the 11 a.m. hour, that's when we're able to take calls. Dial right away, grab an open line. We'll go to the phones as quickly as we can as soon as your calls come in. John, I want to pick up on something you said earlier in the conversation. You said that once a camera is in, they never take them out because revenue starts to flow and government wants those dollars. There was a camera on Porter Street, Northwest, at the bottom of a hill, right, in an area with hardly any pedestrians, maybe the occasional jogger. It was basically a highway. There were no homes, no businesses, no schools, no playgrounds, no anything. It was at the bottom of a hill where the speed limit was like 35, and you'd have to ride your brakes from Connecticut Avenue all the way down a long hill to get to the camera and not be going more than 35 miles an hour just from gravity, just from the amount of speed you would accumulate going down a long hill. We complained about that, and that camera is long gone. And I wonder, what should the process be for A, putting in a camera where there's an unsafe situation, because safety is hugely important, and B, if there's a ticket trap, how do citizens get them dealt with?
Well, how the camera should be determined as to where they go. Number one, you should have a safety study, an engineering study, and then the safety study to document how many crashes you've had in that site, and then whether there are other things that you can use to mitigate against the incidents that you see. And then finally, what we were talking about is that once the cameras in general are put in, then the money becomes organic in the district budget, because a couple of years ago legislation was passed to lower the speed ticket amounts, and then the budget director came back and said, you can't do that because you have to replace that revenue.
Wow.
Once it's there, so if the district is generating $85 million a year, $100 million from automated camera enforcement, then it always has to make that revenue. And you can't end the program because the money and the revenue become organic.
And to add something on to that, tomorrow our story is going to be what is the revenue for 2015. So we filed our Freedom of Information Act requests with the DMV and the district, and we have all the data going back for 4 years of how much money the district has brought in from these speed cameras.
Broken down.
Broken down by camera, but overall in 2015 the district cited in fines more than $84 million in these speed cameras in 1 year. So as John said, that is money that our city council then says, okay, well, we have this money coming in, we need to spend it. Now, once they're here, are they ever going to go away? How do you give up $84 million in 1 year? That does a lot of work.
I think pressure, and let's pick up on line 1, talk to Greg in Northwest. I have to say, I think pressure and the case that was made against the Porter Street camera had an impact. That camera was not there that long. The signs are still there, but the camera itself is gone. So can public pressure be influential?
It's an excellent tool.
I think maybe. Greg, go ahead. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
Doing great.
Actually, I was just calling to make 2 comments. One, in regards to positioning of cameras. In front of Children's Medical Center in Northwest D.C. on Michigan Avenue, there's actually a camera that's literally backed up against a tree. You cannot physically see that camera. And secondly, last year, as a result of traffic cameras, the overall dollar amount went down, and it's assumed that most people started slowing down. But the funds the D.C. government took in were lower. But essentially, D.C. government then implemented putting in and instituting more speed cameras. So is it about money or safety? I'm at a loss here.
Chris, thanks very much. I'm so glad he mentioned Michigan Avenue.
Right.
That's one that feels kind of borderline. In terms of the feel. I'm no engineer. I'm just going on.
It is. Again, because it's the configuration of the road. When people see it, they know it's a divided roadway. And by the way, many of the speed cameras are placed on these freeways. That's what we were talking about. 295, 395 coming into the district. You know, we had a classic example on 395 coming into the city across 14th Street Bridge. There are no speed limit signs on the bridges, right? So once you enter that site, you then see a sign saying automated enforced, and then the camera's there. Like we did for the street you were talking about, Porter Street, there was such a hue and cry, they had to remove the camera.
And one thing that we didn't talk about, and we don't have time, but we'll hit this next time, there are other ways to get people to slow down, and one of them is, I want to say McKinley, where there's a green light in the middle of the street, and that light stays green unless someone drives 30. It's a 25 zone because it's residential, and there's a flashing light that tells you as every car goes past that, there's a spot about, I don't know, half a block up from this light that does nothing but turn red when people drive too fast. If everyone goes by at the proper speed, the light stays green. If one person hits 30, which is a buffer of 5 above the 25, it turns red and people have to stop for a few seconds and then go on. There are other ways to get people to slow down. There are other ways to promote safety.
Can I address Greg's other statement quickly? He had mentioned the fluctuating amount of money, that revenue that's coming in. That wasn't because people were slowing down. That's because speed cameras were broken.
Right.
And now they're all fixed. There's 153 speed cameras in the district right now. They are working, and you can see in this $84 million figure that the revenue is going back up.
$6 million speed trap. It's Chris Papp's story. It's tonight at 11 on our sister station, ABC 7. We will be watching. Chris, thank you so much.
Chris.
John Townsend, thank you so
Great
much. We'll be talking with you both again when we return. Apple versus the FBI and the ongoing debate that pits privacy against security.